So, this is probably not going to come as a surprise to anyone here. I'm not a teacher. I was raised around teachers. My grandparents were all teachers. My grandfather was a university professor. My baby sister was a teacher and now runs a program for children on the autism spectrum. I, on the other hand, hate school. Always have. Mostly because I'm not good at it, because I'm ADD AF. Speaking of which, my favorite joke about ADHD people is, how many ADHD people does it take to screw in a light bulb? 1. Might be 5. Is it 1,000? Why are light bulbs such a weird shape? Did you ever try to make a Mobius strip out of a piece of paper? What if you could do that with a donut? Would it be a Moby donut? We should totally get donuts after this. What? Oh, right, teaching for the back of the internet. When I finished my 4-year degree in mathematics in a quick 7.5 years, I never wanted anything to do with anything school-like again. I'm not a trained public speaker. I mean, I love talking in public, but if you ask my partner Katrina, she might tell you, I'd like it a little bit too much, and I'll just keep talking even when nobody's listening anymore, or even making eye contact. It's sort of in my nature. I think because my grandfather, on my mom's side, was a public speaker on the Washington Speakers Bureau. He made this look so easy, and it totally isn't. But I'm here to talk about something else, probably my least favorite subject, school. Now, in the 18th century, school was not a place that you went. Most people were taught at home by their parents. If you think it's hard getting a teenager up for a Zoom call in the morning, imagine if you actually had to teach them all of that stuff in your house every day. So if you were wealthy back then, you would hire a private tutor. But in the United States, it was actually early settlers in New England, sort of the Boston area and north of there, who had fled England because of religious persecution, and they started the first public schools. It wasn't until the middle of the 19th century, and a guy named Horace Mann, great name, right? This is not him, by the way, and he did not say that. But he started public education becoming a thing. Now, he didn't really care about kids being, educated. He was mostly interested because he thought it was the only way to make unruly American children into properly disciplined citizens. That's probably why I didn't like it very much. And after a couple of failed attempts, trying to make public school a federal thing, it was by 1930 that nearly 100% of U.S. children were attending school. And so, after 142 years of the U.S. being a country, school was now a place that children went. Fast forward to the year 2000, I got a job at a publishing company whose primary thing was making standardized tests for school kids. The irony is that I hated those things, like the bubble sheet things, and I would usually lose interest about halfway through and just sort of make pictures on the bubble sheets. And I didn't do great in school because of that, I think. In 2002, President George W. Bush signed the No Child Left Behind Act. It was a controversial measure. It was supposed to be designed to increase public school accountability, but it was largely unsuccessful. So to any millennials who are watching, I know we said we weren't going to leave you behind, and if we did, I'm sorry. I'm trying to make up for it now. I'm probably only one-ish. The company that I was working at, though, 405% increase in revenue and work overnight. So all of a sudden, I found myself again neck deep in the world of education. And if I'm honest, I was unpleasantly surprised at how poorly an industry that is supposed to help teachers who are underserved and public school students who are also somewhat underserved, any useful support. I got so frustrated, I left that job. Left it. I just walked up and quit. I went to Vancouver, not BC, Washington, not DC. It's right across the river from Portland, Oregon, to do a thing called Scrum. Now, it's a product development method, but it doesn't really matter what it is. But I discovered that I could get paid and make money teaching people how to make things, which I liked a lot better because it seemed more useful. Now, I still had emotional scars from my own learning experiences. So when I started doing this corporate training, which was a rock and roll life I'd been dreaming of, I wanted to find a different way to educate people because it had never worked for me, right? And I know I'm a little bit weird, but it didn't seem like it worked for a lot of people either. So I met a guy named Dr. Medina. He's a prominent neuroscientist who has done research to show that science and schools do not agree on how to teach. And he came up with these things that he called brain rules. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because he has a whole bunch, but rule number 3, every brain is wired differently. And I'm paraphrasing Dr. Medina here, but when you learn, it physically changes the wiring in your brain. It literally rewires it. And according to research, no two people, not even twins, have the same brain. Every brain is wired differently. We can either accept this or ignore it. Now, the current system of education ignores it. And it's not anybody's fault. It's because of where it started from. But it ignores it. And it does that by having grade structures based on age. Brains develop at different rates in different people. And different parts of the brain develop at different rates. And we wrongly assume that every brain is the same. But here's a little known fact. It's true, 100% true. There are 221 million people, some of us, who have a Kylie Jenner neuron. I know you think I made it up. I'm not. It's one neuron hiding way in the back of your noggin that only fires when Kylie Jenner goes live on Instagram. So all of the rest of those people, not those 221 million, they have a different brain than those people. And it's that crazy all over the place the more we look at it. Now, rule number 4, Medina says, is we don't pay attention to boring things. I know that for sure. Like I said, I'm a little bit ADD, and people think that means you can't pay attention. It doesn't. It means you pay attention to stuff that's interesting and fun, right? Boring stuff, forget it. Like, I will glaze over in about 8 seconds. We pay attention mostly because of influences from our memory and from our experience, right? So we pay attention to things that evoke strong emotion, things that give us some kind of theater, and, of course, sex. Didn't say that out loud. The brain basically pays the most attention to about 4 things. Can I eat it? Can it eat me? Can I mate with it? Have I seen it before? Will it kill me? Probably not in that order, right? But rule number 4 also says, and I argue about this all the time with people, we suck at multitasking. We're super good at very simple things, our brains are, because it all happens back here in what's called your pinky brain, because it's the size of your pinky. And it does everything. You're mostly on autopilot. So you can walk and breathe and have your heartbeat all at the same time. No problem. But anything more difficult that requires the front part of your brain, right? Terrible. We are terrible at multitasking. Just as one example, driving while texting, which a lot of places have said, that's not legal, and there's a reason for that. If you drive while you're texting, what your brain does makes you 15 times more likely to get in a serious driving accident than if you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, right? 15 times more. So you might as well just crack one open and drive down the street like a crazy person. So leave your phones off in your car. But it's because we're not good at multitasking. But our world today encourages this, right? It's just everywhere. You walk into any place where there's more than a few people, and you will see people texting. You will see them doom scrolling through Insta or Twitter for some of us older people, and watching videos on YouTube. And all of that, being online and connected all the time, means you're distracted all the time. And that's hard. It's a hard thing to live with, and it's part of why I was so against sort of virtual anything, right? So our senses work best together, rule number 9, he says. And so your head perceives like this whole world based on sight, sound, taste, smell, a bunch of other things. How does this affect education? Well, people in environments that make use of more than one sense always, Dr. Medina says, always do better than those in a one-sense environment. So if you're just reading, you're not going to do as well as somebody who is reading and hearing music and something else, right? Versus a one-sense environment is just not the same. They remember more and with more detail that lasts longer. So there's a bunch more rules that Dr. Medina came up with based on what it read. And if you look at all of them, none of them describe what a classroom looks like. So now what? Well, we've known for years, by the way, and this is a sidebar, traditional education methods don't work very well for divergent thinkers, people on the autism spectrum, people like me who are ADHD, anything that makes you think a little different. It's still true, but now we also know that those methods don't actually work for most normal kids either. No wonder so many kids hate school. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's not the school's fault. It's because we have not caught up to the world that we live in. Oh, what? That was for a different presentation. Well, moving on, sorry. I spent years refining my teaching method in these workshops using a brain-based interactive immersion approach over the course of around 450 workshops. I got it pretty dialed in. Were they any good? No, they were flipping great. I received constant feedback from students that they had never learned that way before. And then it worked. And remember, I have no formal education in teaching, right? But the world was changing. And I knew I was fighting a battle I was losing. More and more adult certification training started happening online. Universities started offering hybrid and fully online degree programs. My own children wanted to attend high school online. I don't think so. No way. But then I started to realize, I was fiercely fighting this education system, trying to tear down the building to walk through the door without much success. I became a straight-up warrior. I was like, anything that's virtual is bad, right? And then the world started to change in a way that sort of reminded me of what my grandfather had said at a speech. In 1995, it looked like a psychic prediction, to be honest. We need to change the way we educate because your children, my children, children in this room don't learn the same way or in the same way by the same things. And they don't need to learn facts as much as they need to learn how to learn in a crazy, globally connected world. So, after more than a decade of being continuously on the road teaching and coaching people worldwide, I was in Boston in March of 2020, and suddenly the whole world went crazy, right? There was people were freaking out because of some virus named after a beer. Now, I don't pay attention to the world usually, but everybody was wigged out. And when I got back to the place that we stay up on Mount Hood in the wintertime, I found out there's not going to be any more travel for a while. And I was like, well, great, because honestly, I'm pretty lazy. I'm happy to just stay up on the mountain and shred the nerve. But my partner, Katrina, she wasn't having it. It's something about kids having to continue living inside and eating every day, I don't know. But I was like, how are we going to teach hands-on, in-person, immersive workshops and coach if we can't leave the house? And then she tells me that the managing director of the global governing body that runs the certification program that I teach for turned off a rule that had been around forever, which is you can't offer this workshop on the line, online, the kids say. But now you could. Now, my first reaction was, that's outrageous. I'm not doing it. I'm writing Howard an angrily worded letter. And he texted me back after this brief exchange, because we're friends, and he's been through this with me before. He said, maybe I should just share my thoughts into a coffee can and put it on a shelf. And that's pretty fair, if I'm honest. Now, it turns out that brain rules mostly require visualization of material and waste up communication. So after translating 4 days of deeply immersive and interactive content with web-based technologies, with an incredible, humbling amount of help from other people, some of whom are in this auditorium, the results were very encouraging. After certifying 300 people, my rate of pass rate hasn't gone down, still right around 95%. So it was way better than I expected. The problem with virtual learning isn't the virtual part. It's not even really the learning part. We have the technology via all manner of electronic devices, exactly the same way we taught in classrooms for more than 103 years. But should we do that? Isn't it better to do something different? Doesn't the amazing technology that has emerged and what science has taught us about how people learn give us an obligation to change the way we teach? I'd argue that it's more than a reform. like the 19th century. I believe we need a revolution. The average American today is 38 and a half years old. I'm a little above average. I'm 50 and 4/5. Nobody does anything. In the same amount of time that we've had that, an information revolution took place. Before 1991, no internet. That, by the way, first website ever made. It's pretty boring except to nerds. I loved it when it came out, but you can still go find it. It's still there. And we had a technology revolution. At all of the most expensive state-of-the-art computing technology that was available in 1969 when we put people on the moon, all of it on Earth was less powerful than your phone. You'd need 535 of those computers to do anything that you can do with one mobile phone. In the early 2000s, there were no smart devices, and I won't bother the kids with all of this stuff, but that one thing, though, is called a cellular telephone. You used to talk to people on it when you weren't at home, right? So that's sort of where we are. We've also had, as we do every 20-ish years, a cultural revolution. It's the one my grandfather predicted in 95. School is no longer a place that we go. It's a whole global community we navigate, and today's students, both adults and children, interact with the world in a way even my grandfather could never have imagined. And he was right. We need to change the way we teach. Kids and adults today interact with the world in a very different way. So, what do we think about all that? We have an obligation to change how we're teaching that makes use of modern technology and that makes use of the way our brain learns and what we've learned about it.